Dad, you promised you'd be back before my birthday. Those were the last words Michael said to his father before he disappeared forever. Or at least, that's what everyone thought. The smell of coffee still filled the kitchen that December morning in 2008. Michael, then only 8 years old, watched his father pack a small suitcase in the bedroom. Sunlight streamed through the window, creating golden reflections in Robert's brown hair. "It's just a business trip, champ," Robert said, adjusting his tie in the mirror. "I'll be back before your birthday. Promise." Michael smiled, showing the gap where his front tooth had fallen out the week before. Back then, his father's promises still had weight. They were like gold coins stored in a child's heart. "Are you gonna bring me a present?" "The best present in the world." Robert crouched down to his son's eye level. His brown eyes sparkled with that expression Michael would remember for years. "Take care of your mom for me, okay?" The hug lasted only a few seconds, but it was the last real hug Michael would receive from his father for the next 15 years. The first few months were silent torture. Sarah, Michael's mother, still set the table for 3 people, as if Robert might show up for dinner any moment. The phone would ring, and she'd rush from the kitchen with wet hands from washing dishes, hoping to hear that familiar voice on the other end. But it was always just overdue bills, credit card promotions, or someone with a wrong number apologizing. The first birthday without Dad was devastating. Michael turned 9 waiting until the last minute for the door to open and Robert to appear with a wrapped present and that smile that made everything okay. Sarah threw a small party, invited some neighbors and cousins, filled the house with colorful balloons and candy. But Michael kept staring at the door, counting the minutes, waiting for a miracle that never came. "He's still gonna come," Michael whispered to his mom that night as she cleaned up the party remnants. The crumpled paper plates, half-empty cups of soda, leftover cake that no one had the heart to finish. "Dad always keeps his promises." Sarah stopped collecting plates and pulled her son into a tight hug. Michael felt his mother's hot tears wet his hair, but he didn't understand why she was crying on what should have been a happy day. At 10 years old, Michael still asked. At 11, he still waited. At 12, he began to understand that maybe Dad really wasn't coming back. At 15, he had erased from memory the exact appearance of his father's face, remembering only fragments, the color of his eyes, the way he laughed, the smell of cologne he wore to work. It was on a particularly rainy afternoon, when Michael was 16 and asked for the 1,000th time if there was any news, that Sarah finally said the words that had been stuck in her throat for years. "Your father abandoned us, Michael. Stop idealizing someone who doesn't deserve it." She said it with a hardness Michael had never heard in his mother's voice. A hardness forged by years of double work, sleepless nights, tears swallowed to avoid showing weakness in front of her son. But some wounds are too deep to heal completely. Michael grew up carrying an emptiness in his chest, a question that was never answered: why? Without Robert, Sarah had to completely reinvent herself. The delicate woman who worked part-time as a secretary transformed into a tireless warrior. She worked mornings at a clothing store downtown, afternoons doing nails at home for neighbors, and nights baking cakes and pastries for orders in the small kitchen that always smelled of cinnamon and chocolate. Her hands, once soft and fragrant with the expensive moisturizer Robert used to give as birthday gifts, became calloused and dry from so much work. Michael watched everything with the eyes of a child growing up too fast. He saw his mother cry in the bathroom, thinking he didn't notice, but he heard the muffled sobs behind the closed door. He heard phone conversations with Aunt Linda, where Sarah vented about exhaustion that never passed and loneliness that hurt most in the early morning hours. Gradually, Michael became the man of the house. Not because someone asked, but because love for Sarah naturally sprouted from his heart. At 12, he already knew how to shop at the grocery store alone, calculating prices and looking for deals. At 13, he learned to fix dripping faucets and change burned-out light bulbs. At 14, he got a job delivering flyers to help with expenses. "You don't need to work," Sarah said when she found out. "I want you to be a kid." "Mom, I want to help. It makes me feel useful." Sarah looked at that 14-year-old boy who already had adult responsibility in his eyes, and felt a mixture of pride and sadness. Pride because she was raising a good man. Sadness because he had lost part of his childhood. "You're more of a man at 20 than your father ever was," Sarah said once, watching Michael fix the kitchen sink with that patience and dedication she recognized as being completely hers, not Robert's. It was 2023. Michael had graduated with a degree in business administration with top grades, worked at a growing tech company, and planned to move to his own apartment the following year. Life finally seemed to have found its rhythm. A rhythm built on true love, mutual sacrifice, and a family formed by the daily choice to stay together. It was on an ordinary Thursday when the ghost from the past knocked on the door. Michael was eating lunch, rice, beans, and steak that Sarah had prepared before leaving for a doctor's appointment. It was a normal day, with sun streaming through the kitchen window and the soft sound of TV from the living room. The intercom buzzed twice, with that shrill sound echoing through the quiet house. Michael went downstairs in slippers, unhurried, thinking it was some delivery guy or the mailman. When he opened the green gate he had painted himself the year before, he had to blink several times to make sure he wasn't dreaming. On the other side of the gate stood a man about 50 years old, graying hair, unshaven, wrinkled clothes. For a moment, Michael didn't recognize him. Then, like a punch to the stomach, memory returned. "Hey, son." The voice was the same. Hoarser, more tired, but unmistakably the same. Michael froze, words stuck in his throat like cotton balls. "I know this must be a shock," Robert continued, running his hand through his disheveled hair. "But, can I come in? We have a lot to talk about." Michael wanted to say no. He wanted to slam the gate in that man's face and return to his normal life. But there was a part of him, small but persistent, that was still that 8-year-old boy waiting for Dad to come back. "Mom's not home," was all he managed to say. "I know. I waited for her to leave. I wanted to talk to you first." Robert entered the house as if it were yesterday that he had left. He observed the changes in decoration, the photos hanging on the wall all without him, the new couch Sarah had bought on installments the year before. "The house looks different," he commented, sitting in the armchair that used to be his. "Your mother always had good taste." Michael remained standing, arms crossed, studying this stranger who claimed to be his father. Where were the worry lines that should exist on the face of someone who spent 15 years away from family? Why didn't his eyes show the weight of abandonment? "Where have you been?" The question came out harsher than Michael intended. Robert sighed, as if he had been rehearsing this moment for months. "Son, I needed to find myself. I left here lost, confused, not knowing how to be a good father, a good husband. I spent these years working, traveling, trying to save money to come back and give you both a better life." The words sounded beautiful, but there was something false about them. Like when a good song is sung off-key, technically correct, but strangely wrong. "I need to use the bathroom," Robert said after half an hour of conversation about regrets and second chances. Michael watched him go upstairs. That's when he noticed something strange. His father didn't hesitate for a second about the direction. He remembered perfectly where the bathroom was, as if he had left yesterday. When Robert came down, Michael decided to test him. "Did you know Mom had a mild heart attack last year?" The man froze for a split second. "No. I didn't know. How is she?" "She's fine now. But she spent 3 days in the hospital." "You didn't know anything? In 15 years, you never asked about our health, our lives." Robert lowered his eyes. "Son, it was too painful. Any news about you made me suffer more. I needed to heal myself first to be able to come back whole." The excuse sounded as hollow as an empty can. Sarah arrived at 6 p.m., carrying grocery bags. The sound of keys in the lock echoed through the house, followed by familiar footsteps Michael had known since childhood. "Michael, help me with these." Her voice died when she saw Robert sitting in the living room. The bags fell to the floor, scattering apples and oranges across the entrance. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael watched his mother turn pale, then red, then pale again. 15 years of anger, hurt, loneliness, and struggle concentrated in those few seconds. "How dare you," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling with contained rage. "How dare you show up here after so long?" Robert stood up, trying that rehearsed smile that fooled no one. "Sarah, honey, I know you must be upset, but—" "Upset?" The word exploded like thunder. "I raised our son alone. I worked 3 jobs. I cried until I had no more tears. I spent nights awake when he had fever, paid for school, doctors, dentist, everything alone. And you think I'm just upset?" Michael had never seen his mother so agitated. Sarah had always been a controlled person, who who swallowed her own pain so as not to worry her son. But 15 years of silence had created a time bomb that finally exploded. That night, Robert slept on the couch, much against Sarah's wishes, who wanted to kick him out immediately. But Michael asked for a chance. He wanted to understand, wanted answers to questions that had haunted him for more than a decade. The next day, father and son went out to talk. They went to the park where Michael used to play as a child, a place loaded with good memories that now seemed to come from another life. "Remember when you taught me to ride a bike here?" Michael asked, pointing to a specific tree. Robert looked in the indicated direction and smiled. "Of course. You fell right there near those benches, scraped your knee, but didn't want to give up." Michael frowned. The tree he had pointed to was on the opposite side from the benches. If his father really remembered that day, he would know that. It was a simple test, and Robert had failed. "Actually," Michael corrected, "I fell on the other side. Near the fountain." Robert blinked several times, confused. "Oh yeah, of course. It's just, there are so many memories, you know? Sometimes they get mixed up." Another lie. Michael began counting mentally. On Monday morning, Michael was getting ready for work when he heard Robert taking a call in the backyard. Something in the urgent tone caught his attention. He approached the window, trying to listen. "I know it's tough, but give me one more week. The kid seems to have money, works at a good company. No, I won't let you guys catch me." Michael's heart raced. "My ex-wife still has the house, should be worth about 300 grand. If I can convince them to sell, or at least take out a loan in their name." The call ended. Robert came back inside as if nothing had happened, finding Michael in the kitchen drinking coffee. "Good morning, champ. Coffee's delicious." Michael watched him silently, processing what he had heard. The puzzle pieces were finally starting to fit together, forming a disgusting picture. That afternoon, Michael lied saying he was having lunch with co-workers. Instead, he went to the public library and searched his father's name on the internet. What he found made him question if he had ever really known Robert. Court cases for fraud. Labor debts. An outstanding arrest warrant for embezzlement. Robert hadn't spent 15 years finding himself or saving money for the family. He had spent 15 years running from justice, scamming innocent people, building a life based on lies and cheating. Michael printed everything and returned home with a folder full of evidence. The man he had idealized, whom he secretly cried wishing to have back, was a common criminal. A con artist who abandoned his family not out of love, but out of cowardice. "Son, I have a proposal for you," Robert said at dinner, cutting the steak Sarah had prepared without even looking at her. "How about we invest together in a small business? I have some contacts, some opportunities." "What kind of business?" Michael asked, pretending interest. "Import and export. Promising market. We just need startup capital, about 50,000 to begin." Sarah stopped chewing, fork suspended in the air. $50,000? Robert, have you lost your mind? "It's an investment, Sarah. In 2 years you'll triple the money." Michael opened the folder he had strategically left beside his plate. "Like these investments here, Dad?" He spread the documents on the table. "Like the shell company you set up in 2010? Or like the scam you pulled on those elderly people in 2015? Robert's fork stopped in the air, halfway to his mouth. For a few eternal seconds, the only sound in the kitchen was the tick-tock of the old clock Sarah had inherited from her grandmother. "Michael, I can explain." "Then explain." The young man's voice went up an octave. "Explain why you didn't disappear to find yourself. You disappeared because you were running from the police." Robert tried to deny, then minimize, then justify. He said the cases were misunderstandings, that the victims were bad people who deserved it, that everything was part of a bigger plan to give the family a better life. Lie after lie after lie, each more pathetic than the last. Sarah cried silently, not from longing or happiness at her husband's return, but from anger at being deceived again. For allowing that man to enter the house she and Michael had built with so much effort. At 23, Michael finally understood why some people simply don't deserve second chances. Not because they're incapable of change, but because they never really wanted to change. "You didn't come back because you missed us," Michael said, his voice firm and cold like it had never been before. You came back because you're in trouble and need money. We're just plan B. That's not true. Then tell me, what's my favorite movie? What subject did I hate most in school? When was my first girlfriend? What degree did I get in college? Robert opened and closed his mouth like a fish out of water, unable to answer a single question. You don't know anything about me, Michael continued, feeling a strange clarity, as if he were waking up from a dream that had lasted too long. Because you never cared to know. I was just an inconvenient child you left behind. The next morning, Michael woke up early and found Robert packing his bags in the living room. I guess it's better if I leave, the man muttered, unable to look his son in the eyes. Yeah, I think that's better too. Robert stopped for a moment, as if expecting a plea, a request to stay, one last chance. When he realized it wouldn't come, he continued packing his few things. Michael, I know I made mistakes, but... Don't, the young man interrupted. Don't make this mistake too. Don't try to justify yourself or make me feel sorry for you. You are exactly who you chose to be. Robert nodded silently, picked up his suitcase and walked toward the door. At the threshold, he turned one last time. I'm sorry. I'm sorry too, Michael replied with a serenity that surprised him. I'm sorry I wasted so much of my life thinking about you. After Robert left, Michael found Sarah sitting on the porch, watching the flowers she had planted in the garden. Red roses that bloomed even in the harshest winters, sunflowers that always found the sun even on cloudy days. Mom, he said, sitting beside her on the swing they had built together the year before. Thank you. For what? For being both mother and father. For never giving up. For teaching me what real love is. Sarah smiled through her tears, that tired but genuine smile Michael had known forever. You know what I learned these past few days? Michael continued, watching a yellow butterfly land on a rose. Family isn't who shares the same blood. Family is who stays when everything falls apart. It's who builds together, who lifts you up when you fall, who chooses you every single day. They sat in silence, watching the flowers dance in the gentle morning breeze. It was a different silence than Michael was used to. It wasn't the silence of waiting or uncertainty. It was the silence of peace. 6 months later, Michael received a call from the police. Robert had been arrested in another state, trying to pull a similar scam on another family. This time, there would be no escape. No more victims. Michael hung up the phone without feeling sadness or relief. Just nothing. Robert had become exactly what he always was, a stranger who happened to share his DNA. That weekend, Michael brought Amanda, his girlfriend, home for lunch. The two most important women in his life got along great, laughing and talking like old friends about recipes, plants, and Michael's plans for the future. Your mom is incredible, Amanda said on the way back home. She raised you so well. Michael smiled, thinking about all the nights Sarah worked late to pay his bills, all the hugs she gave when he had nightmares, all the dreams she sacrificed so his could come true. Yeah, he replied, feeling his heart warm with gratitude. She's the best father I could have had. Sometimes, the greatest strength we can show isn't forgiving those who hurt us, but choosing not to repeat the same mistakes. Michael chose to break the cycle. He chose to be the man his father never was. He chose to build a family based on presence, not absence. On truth, not lies. On love that stays, not love that leaves when things get tough. And that, perhaps, is the greatest victory of all. Because in the end, we're not defined by the parents we had, but by the parents we choose to be. We're not prisoners of the past, but architects of the future. And Michael had built a beautiful future on the ruins of abandonment, proving that true love always finds a way to flourish, even in the most barren soil.